Hello, I'm Barbara Ash, and National Director of the Veteran Institute for Procurement. And welcome to Session 3 of VIP's Continuing Education Workshop Series. All roads lead to GSA. We're thrilled to see so many of you continuing this journey with us. By now, you've heard from a legal expert and from GSA leadership. Today, we're getting tactical. The next two sessions, today and on Thursday, is all about taking what you've learned and putting it into action with proven strategies on how to grow your business using GSA schedules and contract vehicles. These sessions have been designed specifically for veteran business owners like you, giving you the chance to dive deep into the key topics shaping today's procurement landscape. Our goal is to empower you and your business to take full advantage of GSA opportunities and unlock real growth potential. This workshop series is brought to you by the Veteran Institute for Procurement in partnership with the United States Small Business Administration. It is an extended training benefit for VIP grads, current applicants, and any veteran small business owner that is ready to maximize their potential. Just a quick overview. VIP offers 6 specialized training curriculums: Start, Grow, Advance, Aerospace, International, and Corporate. All are offered at no cost to veteran entrepreneurs nationwide. These programs give you the competitive tools you need to win in federal procurement and beyond. Heads up, our VIP Advance and VIP Aerospace courses are scheduled for next month, and only a handful of spots remain. These two programs are only offered just once a year, and when we accept applications on a first-come, first-served basis. So if you've been considering either of these programs, this is your window to apply. Don't let another year pass. Get online, nationalvip.org, and submit your application today. Now, I am thrilled to introduce our distinguished speaker for this morning, Jacelyn Farrell. Jacelyn is a partner in Aprio's Aerospace, Defense, and Government Contracting Services Group, where she leads the firm's GSA consulting practice. With over 15 years of specialized experience, Jacelyn drives strategic initiatives that help contractors navigate complex compliance requirements and position themselves for maximum growth. Her expertise spans the entire GSA schedule life cycle, making her a trusted advisor to businesses seeking long-term success in the federal marketplace. If you want to know how to strengthen your GSA presence, boost your visibility, and sustain your growth, Jacelyn is the right expert for the job. We encourage you to engage throughout the presentation. Feel free to submit your questions anytime using the Q&A box on your Zoom toolbar. Please don't use the chat for questions. However, the chat is perfect for comments and engaging with one another, but keep the questions in the Q&A so that we can address them directly. We'll tackle as many as we can during the session and follow up on any that we don't get to. And now it is my pleasure to welcome Jacelyn to VIP webinar.
Thank you, Barbara. And thank you to everyone at VIP for having me and all of you for joining today. I'm excited to talk to you about GSA's multiple award schedule and what's going on with the current administration and how you can position yourself for success. So with that, let's get started. I am going to begin the conversation today kind of touching on some of the things that Sam and Jeff talked about already, just setting the stage for where we are and how the multiple award schedule aligns with those initiatives this administration has. Then I'll move into talking about the schedule itself, and specifically for those of you that might not have a schedule and are considering pursuing a schedule for your business, I will talk about how to go about doing that, the requirements to get on the schedule, the timeline, the process, and then some best practices for success before shifting gears to discuss the GSA Mass program and what's been going on throughout the program across 2025 with some modernization initiatives. And then I will talk specifically about opportunities for growth and optimizing the schedule, and some best practices to remain competitive and compliant before we will move into questions. So let's get started. Okay. So I know you heard a little bit about the landscape right now in the market, and across the entire calendar year of 2025, we saw lots of executive orders that were then followed up upon with the actual rewrite of the FAR that Jeff was talking about last week. And there's a number of themes here, but I kind of refer to this as procurement process reform and the goal of the administration to streamline acquisition for the buyer and the seller. And they're really targeting opportunities to eliminate waste, reduce regulation, prioritize those commercial solutions like the multiple award schedule, and consolidate purchasing power. They're focused on centralized procurement and moving away from agency standalone contract vehicles and really looking for agencies to the extent possible, to buy commercial off the shelf goods and services. So they don't want agencies targeting more complex requirements if it's not necessary. And how does GSA's multiple award schedule align with this? And I think this is kind of a critical point in considering whether this makes sense for you, particularly with what's going on within the administration and the changes to what we anticipate to be the changes in how agencies are buying from the contractors in the space. So the multiple award schedule is unique. It's been around for a while. It isn't new, but it is the largest vehicle that agencies leverage for buying commercial goods and services. So it has that centralized buying authority. It allows government-wide access, so it's not targeting a specific agency, and it is a commercial marketplace focus. Small businesses have access, and there are a lot of set-aside opportunities for small businesses through the program, as well as GSA takes that initial step when they are evaluating and awarding a schedule to a business in standardizing your pricing. So they evaluate your pricing and they build a price list with you that will become publicly available online for your customers and competitors to see. And the terms of the contract are the same for all schedule holders. So this allows a more efficient buying process for the agency customer. And in addition, it is a self-funded program. So I know we talked a little bit about the industrial funding fee, but the industrial funding fee, or that 0.75% fee that is built into the prices that you see on a contractor's price list and paid by the agency as a part of all contracts, that money is then paid by you, the business owner, on a quarterly basis, and it funds the program. So it is, again, supporting the administration's goal of keeping costs down for the taxpayer. So what is the GSA multiple award schedule? In 2024, I know Sam gave some updated data, but it's roughly the same. Agencies procured more than $50 billion in goods and services through the GSA schedule. It is the largest vehicle for commercial acquisition that agencies leverage. It is a multiple year, indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity contract, and the goods and services that agencies can buy through the program, there are infinite number of items that can be purchased, because anything that you can price that the agency needs to buy, there is a place for it on the schedule. There's even a place for things that are newly emerging. So really, it gives great access for the agencies to buy things that they need in order to meet their requirements. The Vehicle allows you as a contractor to have up to a 20-year term. It's awarded with a 5-year base period and potentially 3 subsequent option periods. And then ultimately you could potentially have 25 years worth of a period of performance, because when the contract expires, you can continue to perform work on contracts awarded before the expiration date. There is no ceiling for the order or contract value. And again, it is a government-wide vehicle that all agencies have access to. I'll talk a bit more about some of the other entities that can buy through the GSA schedules program in a little bit, but there is opportunity for state and local governments to buy in some cases through the schedules as well. It is continuously open. This means that you can decide today or next year to pursue a schedule and have one awarded to your business. And most government-wide acquisition contracts have an on-ramp period, and then they're closed to new opportunities. So aside from the multiple award schedule, the OASIS vehicle that Brian will talk about on Thursday is also going to be continuously open moving forward, but the multiple award schedule, that's a great opportunity for businesses. Ordering, as far as what types of orders you can see through the schedule, you'll see fixed price and time and materials. You cannot receive cost reimbursement type contracts through a GSA schedule. And then finally, the vehicle allows for some of these unique ordering solutions. Blanket purchase agreements, particularly, agencies leverage these when they want to stand up a contract for a continuous need. They can be awarded to a single contractor or a multi-award BPA, where many contractors are awarded this BPA, and then individual task orders are issued against it on a recurring basis across a 5-year period or more potentially. Those BPAs are going to be something to watch because, as Jeff mentioned, the FAR rewrite expanded their applicability to other multiple award contracts, and it's a great way for agencies who do like to have more control over their procurement process to issue a blanket purchase agreement and then control the actual orders that they're going to issue against the BPA with the contractors they want to work with. Then there's also contractor teaming arrangements, and through a GSA schedule contractor team arrangement, it's a little unique. It is not a sub to prime relationship. It is where 2 schedule holders take their individual contracts and bring them together to provide the government a total solution. So this is a great way, and one of the things I always say as an initial growth opportunity to drive revenue through the schedules program is to look at other businesses that you partner with that might have a schedule, and do you have complementary services and solutions or products that you offer, so you can leverage their relationships, they can leverage yours, because in this CTA, you will have both businesses have a direct line of communication with the buyer. So it's a great way for you to leverage someone else's relationship and grow your own through successful performance. And then finally, the schedules also allow joint venture companies to pursue their own multiple award schedule contract. Here's just some numbers. I know that Sam gave some updated metrics for fiscal year 2025, but in fiscal year 2024, there was roughly 52 billion in spend through Mass, with almost 18 billion to small businesses, and then 3.7 billion to veteran-owned small businesses and 4.5 billion to small disadvantaged veteran-owned businesses. So lots of great opportunities here for small businesses underneath of the Mass program. So I'm going to talk now about the advantages of a GSA schedule. I'll do this both from the customer or buying agency side, and then from your side as a contractor, what are the benefits to you? The Mass schedule streamlines ordering for federal agencies. There are shorter lead times, lower administrative costs because GSA administers the contracts and negotiates them, and the terms are already in place for the buyer. It is easier for them to access a broad range of commercial products and services and pursue and stand up a contract for whatever needs that they have. They are flexible and easy to use. There are online proposal and procurement tools to support agencies leveraging the program if they need them. And then there is a lot of cost savings here because GSA takes that effort to pre-negotiate the prices and the terms of the contract with you. And that gives that stamp of approval that your price is fair and reasonable and reduces a number of the requirements for the federal agency as far as competition is concerned. And then advantages for you, the contractor. So again, it's a pre-negotiated contract. You have established rates. These are ceiling rates. So I will say you do have flexibility to what we call offer spot discounts at the order level. So you can still be competitive. You're not tied to those prices. It's just a ceiling price. You cannot exceed the price without being non-compliant. It's easier for you to be a prime contractor and access all of these agencies in one place, especially right now with the administration emphasizing existing contract vehicles. It gives you an opportunity to meet your buyer where they are and say, I have a GSA schedule. You need to use a commercial solution. Let's run this through the GSA schedule. Again, it's flexible. Everything on the contract, as far as what we'll talk about, goes into the proposal. Those are all terms and pricing and points of contact that you have to maintain. And these can all be modified throughout that 20-year period. And you should be modifying and updating the contract periodically to remain competitive. It again allows those teaming arrangements, which are unique through the schedules program. It does have a competitive advantage or a perceived competitive advantage for against non-schedule holders, because oftentimes agencies will look to the GSA schedule for a baseline for your pricing. Sometimes they'll come to you and say they want to work with you, and that's kind of the starting point they'll use for negotiation, even on contracts outside of the schedule. And then finally, there's a shorter award time and again, those lower administrative costs for all. Okay, so let's talk about who can buy through the schedule. I touched on a few of these. You'll see there that GSA directive, you can actually search that, and there is a formal list that has every entity. And I do encourage those of you that have a schedule or pursue one to keep that available to you, because sometimes you do get requests from some non-traditional executive or federal agencies that you aren't familiar with, and you're not sure if you can accept that order. So just that's the full list. But in addition to those federal agencies, there is also access for some mixed ownership government corporations like World Bank, American Red Cross, NATO, those types of entities, the District of Columbia, and even some international organizations. And then the state and local governments actually have the ability to leverage the GSA schedules program through cooperative purchasing under information technology and the security large categories at all times. So they are always a buyer under those large categories. Where they can access the other categories underneath of the schedule is through like a nationally declared disaster or recovery event. Okay. So what can you sell? I keep alluding to this, but it's millions of commercial products and services. We used to joke that you could buy anything, even a bouncy house, through the schedule. But earlier this year, with some of the initiatives GSA undertook to clean up the program, they removed bouncy houses. So I will have to come up with something unique to use in future presentations. But you get the idea. You can sell almost anything. And the way I kind of refer to it is, if there's a price that you could place on that product or service, and you can define it and scope it, you have a place for it on the GSA schedule. I also mentioned that there is information out there on your competitors. So anyone who has a GSA schedule has a public price list. And if you go on to gsaelibrary.gsa.gov, there's a search bar, and you could search a company name, and if they have a schedule, their page will show up, and then you could click on their price list and you could actually see what are they offering, what are they selling, and what are they pricing all of those items at. And then here's kind of a broader picture of the scope of the schedules. So I did mention large categories, and the way GSA breaks the schedules down is that there are large categories, and those are the 12 you see here. And then they have special item numbers underneath of it. And really what they're doing is classifying the goods and services you're going to sell through the schedule. So they start at that high level, large category, and then they really drive down into the granular details of the specific items you're selling underneath of the special item numbers. Special item numbers do align very closely with NAICS codes, though they are not kind of treated the same. Okay, so let's talk about getting a GSA schedule contract. The first place you should always start is, does my company need a GSA schedule? And I often talk to businesses who are kind of in that phase of considering the schedule. And one of the things they think is that they need a schedule to do business with the federal government, and that is not true. It is an avenue, a vehicle for you to leverage in selling to your buyers, but it is just one of many options. It does often come up as an entry point, particularly for a commercial business that is pivoting into doing work with the federal government. It's a great entry point. It's a low cost entry point, and the compliance requirements are not as complex. So it's easier for you if you don't have that infrastructure to support. But again, it's not required. It's just an opportunity and a tool to sell to those agencies. Okay, so we're going to shift to talk about some of the minimum requirements. If you're considering getting a GSA schedule, there's really two programs, and I was joking with Barbara before we started. There were a lot of changes that were released this morning, so I'm going to include some of those updates, but they're not a part of the slides here because it just literally came out today. But traditionally, an offerer, in addition to either being a US-based company or having an office here in the United States, would have to have been in business for 2 years in order to be eligible to pursue a GSA schedule. The program you see on the other side of the screen, the Startup Springboard program, was to support and give an avenue to some of those startup or emerging businesses, like joint ventures, that had less than 2 years of experience, but might have a requirement, might be selling something that an agency has a need or requirement for that is urgent, and they can't wait the 2 years. So that's kind of what the difference is here between the programs, I mean, the avenues to get on the schedule. In both cases, you do have to demonstrate financial stability. They're really just evaluating that if you win work under the schedule, they don't want you to go out of business and then the agency is left there without whatever it is they needed that they were buying from you. You have to have an active SAM registration and demonstrate relevant past performance in the areas that you are pursuing under the schedule, and provide customer references. This can be done through CPARs or just for like questionnaires to those customers, basically looking at their satisfaction with your performance. And then if you qualify under the Startup Springboard program, so this is where there was a change today. The Startup Springboard program didn't have additional constraints beyond the things here that you see. These the program was applicable to certain categories that you were selling, but that has recently changed as well. But what you will see is you don't need that 2 years of experience. And the way they get around this is by allowing you to leverage key personnel. Does not have to be someone who's an executive at the company. This is usually someone who has the experience providing that type of work to the federal government or to a commercial business, and you leverage their past performance as an employee in order to support you pursuing a GSA schedule for your business. Now, the change today was there's also a fast lane program under GSA, which has unique requirements associated with it. And that is around the speed that they will process your proposal. And now they have said that unless a business qualifies under fast lane, and not everyone who submits a proposal is going to qualify under the fast lane program, but Unless you qualify under FastLane, you cannot use the Startup Springboard program. So we're still getting our arms around those changes, but I just wanted to share that with you today. So as far as eligibility and evaluation criteria, the proposal itself is broken down into three big buckets. Administrative, which is going to be your general company information and financial statements, points of contact, addresses, things like that. And then there's a technical proposal that's going to be looking at your business's experience, providing that type of work, and those customer references and quality control standards. And then there's a pricing piece that is to negotiate and establish that price list that will be published online. So one of the things they'll look at as far as corporate experience for your business is whether or not you all have experience in providing those proposed goods or services, and also what kind of controls you have as a business for accounting, staffing, subcontracting if it's applicable, and those quality control standards. When you're looking at the financial stability piece of it, that financial responsibility determination is focused on looking at balance sheets and income statements for the past 2 years. They do not have to be audited financial statements. They're going to look at it and focus on net income, retained earnings, whether or not you have access to a line of credit, and they're looking for positive debt to equity ratio. There have been businesses that we've worked with who went through an acquisition or were a startup that still had that financial responsibility determination with GSA just fine. So they do allow you to provide additional explanations around what's going on with your business to support that you have that financial stability. When looking at past performance, they want to see that you have experience, particularly for services companies, around providing that type of work to customers. And they want to see those customer references, whether it be from CPARs or the questionnaires you send to them, that they had a positive experience working with you. And then some product or service and pricing information. So depending on what type of offer you put in, if you're a products company or a service company, there's different information you provide. But some of the things to think about are, can you provide any price support? And this is a part of a change that's coming that I'll talk about later, but price support is something you should still consider regardless of what's happening and the changes underneath of the MAS program, because GSA often asks for that regardless of what the basis for your offer is, to validate that the price is fair and reasonable. So they want to see that you have a history of offering these items for sale and selling them. For products companies, everything that you put on the schedule has to be Trade Agreement Act compliant. And then when you're a services company, you will have to build out labor categories and include minimum education, years experience, and a description of the type of work that individual would be responsible for. And this is particularly important because from a compliance perspective, they do validate that the people you staff on every contract against the GSA schedule meet or exceed those qualifications. So just keep that in mind. One myth that a lot of businesses have is that you need to have experience selling to the federal government in order to get a GSA schedule, and that is not true. They're really focused around commercial sales, actually. So they want to know that you have experience selling. But regardless of who your customer base is, it's just that you have that experience. It doesn't matter specifically who they are. And then some of the other additional information you could expect that GSA will request, some contracting plans if you're a large business or a not-for-profit. The products offers, they're going to look for part numbers, a description of the products, as well as product literature, which really helps GSA to evaluate the scope of what you're selling and make sure it's aligning to the right SINs and in the right place under the schedules. You'll have to provide a commercial price list. You need, where applicable under specific SINs, you need to provide a UPC code. warranty information, delivery terms, and then for those businesses who are resellers and not the manufacturer of the items they put on their contract, they have to get a letter of supply from that manufacturer. And that's really just to give confidence to the buyer that you have that uninterrupted source of supply for anything that they buy from you. For service offers, you need a professional compensation plan and an uncompensated overtime policy statement. Both of these are often found in your employee handbook, onboarding materials, or benefits information. If they don't exist, you can write it up specifically for the proposal, but you do have to provide that information. And then education and experience substitution. So I just talked about the defining the labor categories, the minimum education and minimum years of experience, and how you're going to be tied to those minimums. So we really do, when we work with businesses, emphasize the need for education and experience substitutions, because you got to anticipate the work you're going to be performing against those labor categories and the individuals you may hire for those positions. So this is where you would define a methodology for substituting additional years of experience for higher education and vice versa. And that gives you the ability to do that at the order level and still be compliant with the contract. If you're providing training, you have to provide the course details, and then anything that is applicable to service contract labor standards. So any of those labor categories you might propose, there's additional information you would provide there. End user license agreements or terms of service for any items where that is applicable, you would provide those. GSA reviews it, and you go back and forth with a negotiation with their legal team to make sure that anything the government cannot accept is removed. And then you identify points of contact for various responsibilities in actually administering the contract post-award. So talking about the pricing proposal, up until last summer, there were two methods that you would choose from, depending on what you were offering under the contract. What I will tell you is that one of those other changes that came out today, and is something GSA has been working on since last summer, is making this TDR, or transactional data reporting program, that's been around for almost 10 years now, mandatory for all schedule holders. And the big change in TDR is that they are looking at prices paid information on your orders. So when you're reporting, you report more frequently and you report more granular detail. And the trade-off for that is that what was historically kind of a challenge for many businesses in pursuing the multiple award schedule was the price reductions clause. And that is where, under this CSP, commercial sales practice method of negotiating contracts, businesses ultimately created a tie between their GSA pricing and their non-GSA contracts. So some particularly small businesses, but all businesses who were under that model, had a different type of compliance that they were monitoring on a regular basis. And in many cases, it caused businesses to not be able to accept an order without lowering their GSA price. So all of this is changing. It is going to be mandatory that everyone is underneath of transactional data reporting. I believe the Refresh 31, they said, is coming out in February, and my guess is that by the end of the quarter, everyone will have to convert. So everything you see in the TDR column that says yes, those are items you would still provide in your pricing proposal. The one thing I will say is, while supporting price documentation, that would be invoices, quotes, proposals showing prices that your customers have paid for the items that you are proposing for addition to your GSA schedule. It's not required under TDR, but most contracting officers still ask for it because they are struggling to adopt the TDR methodology, and they just don't know how to do that fair and reasonable price determination without it. So just keep that in mind while you're building your strategy for the proposal on what pricing you're going to propose, and if they do ask for price support, if you have it or not. Okay. Timeline and best practices. So This slide kind of covers high level the process that you'll pursue when you put an offer together, and everything you see on the left side of the screen, that's a part of developing the proposal. Once you've done all of that, you move through to submission. You then are waiting at GSA. And what I will tell you is that the time the clock starts is when that proposal is submitted to GSA. So while it could take you 2, 3, 4, who knows how many months putting the proposal together, the timeline once it's submitted all the way through award with GSA varies. And it is significantly changing right now just because of the interest in the schedules program that has increased over the past year. Historically, it was roughly from the time you submit till you saw award was on average 6 months. Sometimes it was less, sometimes it was more, depending on which center you were assigned to, which contracting officer and their workload. Now, what contracting officers are sharing with us is that don't anticipate receiving an award in less than 200 days after you submit, and most likely closer to 280 days. So I have been talking to companies who are going down this path and telling them that probably from the time you start working on the proposal, assuming you submit pretty quickly in the first 2 to 3 months, you probably can anticipate having a schedule sometime in the next 12 months. And I would just keep that in mind, because all of the work that we're anticipating seeing underneath of the schedule is going to start coming out, and you don't want to delay getting an offer in if that's what you're looking to pursue, or if you know that one of your other contracts might be shifting under the GSA schedule based on what's happened this past year. But once GSA picks it up, so it will be assigned to someone. That doesn't mean they'll start reaching out to you yet, but once they get to your proposal, they will begin what we call the clarifications phase. This is where they're asking questions, understanding the proposal, making sure they have everything they need to move towards negotiations and award. Once all those questions have been finalized, then they'll begin negotiations. And in a minute, I have a slide that talks about the specific things that they're looking at during negotiations. But once they finalize all of the negotiations, they memorialize those terms and conditions and award the contract. The way that this is kind of classified for you to see is that everything that has blue on it is something that you, the contractor, will either be responsible for or involved in. And then you see there's only really 2 phases where the government gets involved, and that's clarifications and negotiations. So what are some best practices for successful contract award? Probably the most important is designating the right resources. Everyone in your business has a full-time job doing something other than this proposal. And the amount of data that is required for the proposal, it's a lot. So it comes from many different departments, depending on how your business is structured and how many employees you have. It really varies on who's going to be involved in the process, but you could reasonably assume someone from finance, someone who's involved with pricing, someone maybe from contracts, HR. So it really depends. And if you're a small business, those responsibilities to gather this data are going to be even more challenging for you, because you just don't have as many people and resources and bandwidth to support it. So really be thoughtful about when is the right time to do it, so that you can actually move through and get it submitted, and ensure that everyone is aware who needs to be involved, what needs to be pulled, and work through that. I would always assign a single point of contact who's really going to own it and be the project manager, and also be the individual who is going to be listed for the government to contact when they pick that offer up. Some more best practices around the process for getting the contract awarded. It's really important for you to understand that everything that goes into the proposal has an impact for you from a compliance standpoint as a business. And so really understanding what you're putting in the proposal, what it means for you once the contract is awarded, is going to ensure that the information is accurate, it is complete, and and that everyone knows kind of where you're going with the submission, because ultimately you sign off that everything in there is current, accurate, and complete. And if that's not true, you're already putting your business at risk. So be thoughtful about it. I said before, you got to be fast, but also you really need to be thoughtful. And sometimes it is slowing down to make sure you truly understand all of the implications. And then really the biggest thing once it's submitted is be prepared to respond very quickly to GSA's clarification requests. You'll wait 6 months for someone to even reach out to you once it's been submitted, and then they'll give you something crazy like 24, 48 hours to respond to their request. So you really have to make sure that you're seeing those emails, that you have the right person receiving them, and that you quickly respond so that you don't risk waiting 6 months and having this proposal rejected and then have to kind of get back into line. Okay, so negotiation wise, this is after GSA asks all of their questions and understands your proposal. They'll have a call with you to talk about negotiations, and they're really focused on pricing terms here. And these are the three they always talk about: basic discount, prompt payment discount, and quantity volume discount. Prompt payment is always a challenge for businesses unless you're already set up in your systems to monitor and track that. And quantity volume discounts, that's tying an additional discount to a certain quantity of an item that's purchased or once you hit a dollar volume. And they will always ask for all of these. You do not have to give all of these. Not all of them are going to be required. And the biggest thing to focus on is you do have to give something. You know, everyone wants to feel like they win in a negotiation, so you're going to have to give something, but you have to be cognizant of what your business can actually maintain and be compliant with. So understand what these mean, how you track them, how they work for your business, and push back on something that doesn't make sense, because you should not be in a position where you know you're going to have trouble being compliant by accepting one of these. Once all of these are finalized, then GSA memorializes them in a document called the Final Proposal Revision Letter, and then they will award the contract. After your contract is awarded, there's lots of compliance. I'm not going to go into every single thing that you have to be compliant with, but some of the big things to think about, you need to know what the terms and conditions are that you agreed to. You should document some policies and procedures, and then identify individuals in the organization who have a role that may kind of cross over some of those responsibilities that touch the schedule, and train that staff so they are familiar with the requirements. You've got a process in place. If there is anything that they identify or don't know how to do, that they know who to reach out to. That will help you protect yourself from kind of having well-intended mistakes, I call them. So just really be thoughtful about educating everyone who is a part of selling through the schedule and using the schedule. And then you get the vehicle, but it's just that it is a tool to sell to your buyer, and they're not guaranteeing any work by you receiving this schedule. And GSA actually has part of the compliance requirements for holding the schedule and keeping it is that you have to meet a minimum sales volume. So when you first are awarded a contract, they give you 2 years to meet the first 25,000, but every year after that, they're expecting that you're going to do 25,000 a year. And they look at it across an average at the time that those 5-year options come up. And right now, in the environment we're working under and with changes they've made to the schedules, there are no exceptions. So if you do not meet in your base period 100,000 across the 5 years, or in a subsequent option period 125,000, then they will not exercise your next option. They will just let the contract die. So really be thoughtful. Even before you consider a schedule, I always think it's good to have an idea of like, what does that pipeline look like for your business? Who are you targeting? Is it a customer? Is it a contract? Is it a partnership? Whatever it is, really be thoughtful about pursuing it, and don't just think I've got 5 years to get there, because it goes quick. Keep the contract up to date, and for sales reporting and paying your IFF fee, you just want to make sure you're doing it on time. And then finally, recognize the risks here. So if you build out those policies and procedures and you're following all of the compliance and keeping the contract up to date, just be aware there will be what GSA calls contractor assessment visits. This is where they are spot checking compliance. It's not an audit. It can feel like one, but they're going to check compliance with various aspects of your contract. And then those businesses that see a significant sales volume could be triggered for a formal audit by the Office of Inspector General. And in all cases, just be prepared to be responsive and make sure that you are providing that information and disclosing everything. Okay, so we're going to shift gears now and talk more about what GSA has been doing across 2025. We're calling it mass modernization. And there are three big initiatives that I'm going to talk about in this section. So the first is GSA's right sizing initiative, and this is where GSA undertook a cleanup of the schedules program. And then the transition to the FAS catalog platform, or FCP. This is a change to the system they use for uploading your price list. Historically, this was the SIP program that everyone hated. And they're going to use this FAS catalog platform for those price list uploads and even modifications. And then the expansion of transactional data reporting that I touched on a little bit earlier. And finally, I don't have a formal slide on this, but it is something I just wanted to include. So I talked about Refresh 31, where they're going to implement the changes. Refresh 30, and just for those who aren't aware, a refresh to the schedules is when GSA updates the terms and conditions in the solicitation document. So when they update those terms and conditions in the solicitation, they release these mass modifications, and they call them refreshes, and they number them for each one. And you, as a contractor who holds a GSA schedule, has to review them and accept them. And with the most recent one, Refresh 30, GSA implemented all of the RFO deviations. So those of you that aren't familiar with all of the deviations and changes and what those mean for your business or how things might change, I would say familiarize yourself with those because they do apply to the schedules now. Okay, so looking at the right sizing initiative, and this really was tied to some of those executive orders that expanded GSA's authority and made them the executive agent responsible for all GWACs and IT IDIQs across the federal government and acquisition landscape. This came out almost immediately following kind of the expansion of that authority. And what GSA did was they cleaned up the program. They looked at underutilized SINs, duplicative SINs. They removed those that were underutilized, and they consolidated others. But they also started strictly enforcing compliance with the terms and conditions of the contract on you, the contractor. They off-boarded contractors who failed to meet those requirements. The biggest reason this matters, and kind of the worst case scenario, is that contractors who failed to meet the minimum sales are going to be off-boarded. Historically, GSA, especially when you were in the base period, or if you were in like a subsequent option and you had previously been successful, but you struggled during one of your options to meet that minimum sales, you could present a business case. You could show GSA all of the networking events and relationships you built and all of the proposals you submitted and everything you did to win work but failed. And they would say, okay, you really tried. We're going to exercise that option anyways. This year they said no. We even had a client who won work in that last 12 months before the expiration date of their contract, but they hadn't started invoicing it yet. And GSA said, that's fine. You can keep doing that work, but you haven't invoiced for the required $25,000 on average across the 5-year period. So there wasn't $125,000 worth of sales, and they canceled their contract. So there is no exception like there used to be. And I think you need to be thinking about this not when you're in year 4, because year 4 is when GSA determines whether they will exercise that option or not. It needs to be if you're in year 2 and you have no sales, no pipeline, no targets, and just don't know how you're going to get that work, you really need to be proactive and take a different approach. Make sure that your contract is current, it's aligned with the demand in the market, the initiatives that the administration has, and things that they are prioritizing so that you can pursue those opportunities. And again, keeping track of that minimum sales requirement. Okay, so GSA's transition to the FCP platform. This is, again, where they are changing the official system of record for catalog price list uploads, modifications to pricing moving forward. The reason this is particularly important is that most businesses are looking at this, and just so you know, they're doing this on a rolling basis. So some companies have already gone through it, some are still going through it, some haven't even been requested to do it yet. But when you're going through it, it's considered a baseline in GSA's mind. They just want you to reestablish your pricing to convert you to this new platform. The challenge is that GSA plans to use the information that you put into this baseline mod to validate your monthly transactional data reporting that you will do for sales reporting on the contract. And so you really have to think about what you are structuring in this this baseline mod, because there are additional fields that you will be adding that didn't exist before. And you need to understand how this is going to work from a sales reporting perspective so that you're setting yourself up for success and not creating validation issues or challenges where every month you just can't get that sales reporting to go through. So really think about that as you're doing that process. And also, it is tied to any mods that you have. So some contracting officers will not work on any other modifications to your contract until you have been baselined and converted to this system. So really be responsive when you get that request to transition and start working on the process. That way you are thinking ahead to your future sales reporting, but you are also thinking and moving quickly in line with any other pending actions you might need to take to update your contract. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about the TDR expansion. This slide is not up to date as to what came out with the advance notice for Refresh 31, but over the summer, GSA expanded TDR to additional SINs and then made it mandatory for any contractor who had a TDR SIN on their contract. Now, in February, anybody who has a schedule that is not TDR yet, you will be converting to TDR. And all schedule holders will be under this method of negotiating your contract and managing it moving forward. So the reason it matters is that you have to submit more detailed sales reporting. And one of the historical issues with this program was that the data that was being reported was not good. So there is a big investment on data quality cleanup. And that means they've made some changes to the system, so it's a little bit harder to put things through if it doesn't align exactly as GSA wants. So again, thinking about that FCP baseline process, you really have to make sure that you're reporting correctly. But it is a little bit more of a burden. So the biggest thing that you as a contractor can be doing right now is thinking about your system. So where are you tracking information for your contracts and in your accounting system for invoicing and payments? But think about all of the systems that you leverage and evaluate gaps in being able to track and report the data that's required for TDR. And then use what you can in your systems, or you could, if you have the resources and you want to invest in a new system, you can, but you want to automate the process as much as possible so that you're really more focused on winning the work and performing the work and less about the burden with the monthly sales reporting. Again, data quality and accuracy is going to be critical to be compliant. what was the biggest compliance risk in the past is being removed completely from the contract. But we have worked with a number of attorneys and talked to them about TDR and this data quality. And this is going to be the biggest compliance risk to schedule holders, because you need the quality of the data needs to be accurate from the standpoint of what GSA is expecting and wants to see. But also, as a contractor, you need to advocate for yourself, particularly in what I say is the transition period, in converting you over to this model, but also ongoing tracking of the data, is that you don't want to report what isn't accurate just because GSA says the system has to be this way. So really advocate for yourself that you only report what is actually happening and is accurate, and try to work with your contracting officer to get some understandings in place, especially for those contracts that were initially awarded before you were under TDR, I think is going to be important. Okay, so let's talk about optimizing the schedule and some growth opportunities here. Really, optimization matters for a lot of different reasons. You're going to increase your visibility, you're going to position yourself for new opportunities, ensure compliance, and support that competitiveness underneath of this modernized mass environment. But specifically, looking at some of the strategies to do this, it really is around maintaining the schedule and thinking about your business in line with opportunities you want to pursue and what's going on with your customer base. So you should diversify your contract from a scope perspective to meet agency demand. If you have additional capabilities that maybe your agency customer who buys off of the schedule historically uses, but they're not on your schedule, why? We need to get them on now, because if that customer decides they have to buy from you through the schedule and they need to do it quickly, you're not positioned for success to respond quickly. So you really need to look at all of your capabilities that you're selling to all of your customer base, new things that you might be creating, and ensure that you have those capabilities on the contract. Update existing items. So anything that's on there that might be outdated, things that you can do to align yourself with what's going on with this administration, and some of the things that they have emphasized and de-emphasized. So if you know that there are certain words that are being picked up by DOJ in every opportunity, and they're run the risk of having to slow down the negotiation with your buyer because you have to rework the scope of the contract, anticipate some of those things. I mean, the information is out there. So what can you do with your existing offerings to position them or update them if they haven't been updated in a while, to continue to keep yourself competitive? Always institute regular reviews of your terms and conditions, because as your business changes across that potential 20-year period, you should be updating the contract. And if you need to renegotiate terms and conditions so that you can continue to be compliant and it represents and aligns with where your business is now, you're doing that. And then finally, look to leverage partnerships. I said this in the beginning, but really the federal government, they're creatures of habit. They want to buy from the same people, and they like working with people that they like working with. So if you have great relationships with other government contractors, talk to them. Where are they selling? How are they selling? How can you guys work together and provide a total solution? Do they have opportunities under the schedule or elsewhere that you guys can partner and team on? Just always be thinking about leveraging partnerships, potentially considering maybe your own joint venture or partnership that you create for teaming agreement purposes and those things. And then I'll also say, while I'm talking from the perspective around TDR of all the challenges you're going to face as a business in converting to it and maintaining compliance with it, with every challenge and change, there's always opportunity. And TDR does allow a significant change and more price flexibility for you as the contractor. You no longer are tied, or your hands aren't tied from selling outside of the schedule the way that you want to sell. You have complete price flexibility, and you're basing your pricing on market pricing. So you are looking at competitors, you're looking at other schedule holders. It is not supposed to be a look back and a historical analysis of how you've sold before. It is really looking at where you are now. And as long as your price is fair and reasonable across the market, you've got a lot of price flexibility. So familiarize yourself with the changes. And while you're adopting them from a compliance standpoint, look for the opportunities in them for your business. Okay, I touched on a few of these strategies for growth, but I think the biggest thing we learned this year is that you have to innovate and you need to diversify. If your business isn't consistently looking at what's going on in the market and innovating your offering to align with changes like AI and how the government is going to start leveraging AI and is advancing their tech in-house and making some of these changes, like, do we need to acquire a business to expand our capabilities? Do we just need to improve or update what we sell and make sure we're aligning with where the federal government is going? But from a diversify standpoint, this should be you need to have a diverse offering. You need to have a diverse customer base. We saw businesses who had single agency customers completely decimated by what happened this year. So really think about diversifying your customer base, targeting some new customers, and then look at your contracts that you leverage to diversify your contracts. I think all of that is really going to position your business for success, and do it on a regular basis. Don't get comfortable and stay in one space because you've had this contract for forever and it works well. What are you going to do next? And is that a partnership? Is that expanding an offering? Potentially any kind of acquisition to either merge in with another firm and get more infrastructure, or even acquire a smaller business to expand your capabilities and remain competitive. But all of these things are going to be essential to continue to be successful in the market. And then I'll touch on these last two slides quickly so we can get to questions. Compliance as competitive advantage is really key. I've talked a lot about both sides of this, and I feel like they complement each other so well. While you are keeping your contract up to date, thinking about expanding your offerings and capabilities and monitoring changes to the schedules program, preparing for TDR and things like that, all of that together that you are doing is going to allow you to be competitive because you understand your contract's up to date, you know that it has what you need, and you can really quickly respond to your customers' needs when they reach out to you, and you can drive business to the schedule to help them meet the requirements that they are facing so that they can buy from you quickly. And then some winning strategies for veteran-owned firms. Leverage set-asides. They're great set-aside opportunities under the schedules program. Consider some of those partnerships, whether it's through the contractor teaming agreements or forming a joint venture, working with primes to expand your capabilities and past performance. All of these things are going to be essential. And then keep up to date with the market. The great thing about working with the federal government is so much data is publicly available that you can go look at. So where underneath of the schedules is the government buying, and which SINs are those? And do you have capabilities under those SINs? And should you add them to your contract? So just keep up to date on those types of things and make sure that you are always keeping the contract up to date. Your catalog could fall off of GSA Advantage or eLibrary where it's posted, and that prevents agencies from buying from you if you're not keeping it up to date. So all of these things are really important to make sure that you're positioned to focus on driving revenue through the schedule as opposed to last minute modifications or the fire drill to get it up to date. The final thing that I will say, and I don't know if I mentioned it before, so if I'm being repetitive, I apologize, but I think it's really important to emphasize. I know we talked about the landscape and what's happening and the push for these GWAC vehicles, but one of the pieces that I think is really critical and is different, because like we've said, they've tried to push in this direction in the past, and with everything with the government swings one way and then it swings back. But one of the things that I think is really critical to understand why this might be different and why we really do believe everything we're hearing in the market that these vehicles are going to be critical in the next few years is because of the workforce and the reduction in force that we saw across this past year. I know in GSA, for every 5 people who leave, they're only hiring one more. So just think about the volume of contracts they're managing and their workload. What contracting officers are sharing with us and our clients is that they just don't have the capabilities and bandwidth to take on any additional administrative burdens. And one of the things in the FAR Part 8 update, it says that if an agency contracting officer determines that they cannot use the preferred vehicles or the mandatory use vehicles, that they have to basically submit a business case to say why and seek a waiver of approval within their agency. And this is something that I think is going to prevent them from doing it just to continue buying the way that they always have, because they just don't have the bandwidth. So really be thinking about these vehicles and make sure you're positioned to support your customer base. So with that, I guess we can move to answer some questions.
Oh, that would be great, Jason. And that was an excellent presentation. Thank you so much for providing what can be very complicated, process, GSA schedule, but really dissecting it and hitting the highlights and the resources and what to keep an eye on and some of the
Yeah.
questions to ask, most importantly, as well as you go
Yeah.
along. There are, speaking of questions, we do have time for some questions, so let's get at it right here. Um, all these acronyms. What is the difference between a BPA, a blanket purchase agreement, and an IDIQ?
Great question. So the IDIQ in this case is the GSA schedule, indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity vehicle. But the blanket purchase agreement is actually for to explain it underneath the schedules program, it rides on or attaches to the terms and conditions of the overarching IDIQ. So it is not a contract for work, but it is where an agency says, I know I'm going to need information technology consulting services repeatedly. So I'm going to stand up this BPA that goes across, most of the time it's 5 years. And then they can either choose to award to a single contractor or multiple contractors, and they issue their own task orders against it. So they're just different. One is for the work, and one is the avenue
Okay.
to sell. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. Their questions are coming in, which is great here. So another question here with GSA and mass government ordering officials. Who do you typically see place the orders on behalf of the government? Is the majority of contracting officers at locations, or have you experienced command designated ordering officials? So who actually is the
Buys through
buyer?
GSA.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the schedules are unique because you work with GSA contracting officers for maintaining your contract. So they keep the price list up to date, they'll negotiate changes to that. But the ordering agency contracting officer is who is the buyer. And in some cases, that could be a GSA contracting officer. In other cases, it could be someone from the Department of War or a state and local government, depending. So GSA contracting officers administer the contract with you, but they do not buy from you. It's going to be within the agencies themselves.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Good question. Good question. For past performance, can we showcase, I think you mentioned this commercial past performance, but and you did say yes, and
Yes.
actually they're looking for that, right? Commercial,
Yeah.
bringing
Yes,
in commercial best practices. But here's the part two. How about subcontract work? Does that count as past performance?
it does. It
Awesome.
does. You just need to identify what portion of the work you were responsible for in your narrative.
Okay, so it counts. Excellent. Here's another one. How does the government view subcontracting or 1099 well, first of all, a 1099 is not an employee. We can never use those two
Right.
words. So I'm not going to say
Right.
it. So how can the government view subcontracting or a 1099 contractor for GSA contracts? And can the owner provide education's license experience in addition to contracted work to demonstrate reliability? So how
So
does
I
that?
don't know if they're asking about whether this helps with past performance qualifications, because usually in that case, they're looking at the company level. So they're not talking about the individual employees when they're looking at the actual support for getting on the schedule. So when you're looking at past performance there, it's not at the individual employee level, it is at the company level, and it's your project. When you're talking about staffing the actual work, and performing work against an order that is issued to you, you have the same avenues that you would on any other contract to staff it. So you can structure that if it's a 1099 or if they're a full-time employee, whatever makes sense for the work that you're going to perform. Hope
Okay.
that answered their
Okay,
question.
so
Yeah.
yeah, so if you're familiar with the RFP process responding, and it's very similar, so
Yeah.
you can list who's going to do the work, is what you're
Yeah.
saying. Okay,
Yes.
right. For CTA teaming agreements, do both firms have to be on the schedule already, or does only one teaming partner need to be on the schedule to do a CTA?
Good question. Under GSA's CTA, it is two schedule holders who use their individual schedules to build that total solution. If you are a schedule holder or you want to partner with someone who is a schedule holder, you can do it under a sub to prime relationship.
Oh, okay, so then one would not need to be versus a
Right. It
CTA.
just wouldn't be a CTA. It would be a sub to prime.
Okay, now I have a follow-up question. So is there an advantage to a CTA versus subprime or prime?
So when you're talking about the GSA schedule, one thing I tell everyone who's new to the schedule is that contractor teaming arrangements are really a great way for a business who doesn't have a lot of relationships and is trying to get into a new agency or grow their network of buyers. And that's where the CTA is fantastic, because when you are a sub, you don't get to connect with the buyer. But under GSA's CTA model, both businesses, even if there's one that is considered like the lead partner on the CTA, both businesses have a line of communication with the buyer and the contracting officer. So what's great is if company XYZ brings me in and I don't know them and they say, I've got this opportunity and I could really use your support to come to meet the needs of the buyer. I'm now going to meet John Smith at the Department of War because I am working with you and that's your contact. But if I do a great job, they're going to call me next time because I've now connected with them directly. So that's a great way
Huge
to grow
difference.
business. Yes.
Huge difference. And I even saw a thumbs up on that. So that's a foot stomp moment right there.
Yeah,
That is why it's better to have a CTA versus a prime sub on GSA.
exactly.
But
One thing I'll add on the
the
CTA,
catch, yeah.
one thing I will add is that if it is a set aside, both team members have to meet the size standard. So
Oh,
on a set aside, you still have to have both team members meet it. So you can't team with a prime to give them access to a set aside opportunity that's like a large business. You would have to let them be your subcontractor if they wanted to work on it with you.
if it was CSI, but you could still do obviously a CTA with anybody you want.
Anyone, as long as they meet the size standard on the order.
Right.
Yeah.
And if there's none, there's none.
Yeah.
That's right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And of course, it takes a year to get on.
Pretty much. I will say there is only one way to expedite an offer, and that is if you have a warranted contracting officer send a letter directly to GSA and they say we need them on the schedule.
Okay. Okay. How often are you able to update, change, add sins, and or your pricing on the GSA schedule? How are you allowed? How often are you allowed to do it or able to do it?
So I'll say you could do it any day, every day. Of course, that all depends on GSA's processing time. You can't make two of the same changes at once. Like if you already put something in to add a bunch of labor categories to your contract, you have to wait till those are awarded before you can add more labor categories if they weren't a part of it. But you can make changes every day.
Okay. Okay. Excellent. Is there a best practice for connecting as subcontractors or 1099 opportunities as a company that is small and getting started in this, but do not have contacts with contractors yet?
So if you don't have the existing relationships now, if you have any contractors you would like to partner with, go look them up, see if they're on the schedule, see what their sales are through the schedule. All of this is publicly available information and do some outreach, try and build a relationship with them and let them know what your capabilities are and ask, next time you have an opportunity, we'd love to work with you, but you're going to have to do some networking there to grow those relationships. If you have existing relationships and they have a schedule, again, let them know you're interested in working with them.
Okay. 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 Great. So this individual says, I'm a veteran-owned small business, service-disabled veteran-owned small business who's partnered with a non-certified small business who's also partnered with a non-certified entity trying to gain visibility with my leverage. Would a joint venture schedule be the best option if we offer or sell a product in demand, and would it help to target set aside non-cert and lead as a prime for competitive points to land a schedule?
So this sounds like I will say there's so many layers that
Yeah.
there's a strategy here you would want to come up with. While I definitely think joint venture and a GSA schedule for the joint venture is an opportunity, especially because you have the partnerships. Um, where I see JVs most successful is a lot of times they form because there's someone sizing out of an opportunity and they're targeting the follow-on work, so they quickly ramp up the JV together, and that allows the protege to get a part of it, and then the mentor kind of keeps a piece of the pie. That's not to say you can't be successful in just kind of building a pipeline under the schedules, but you just really need to build that strategy. I always say like a GSA schedule is great, but if you have no plan for it, it's a lot of investment that you could potentially see canceled in 5 years. So just think through who you're targeting and what makes sense for that buyer.
Okay. Okay. And then there was a part two on that question. My personal finances are a bit risky for the past years, and my partners are financially stable. Bonding would just need an open-minded ORM. Again, it's a strategy. You'd have to
Yes,
understand
it is.
that.
It is. And with a joint venture offer, you still have to disclose individual company information. So it's a
Oh,
little more complex on a JV offer where you're providing, the JV's information, but most times they're unpopulated. So then they go back and they want to see the individual company information. So you'll want to be thoughtful in how you craft that narrative around the financials and just explain how you will kind of work together in that partnership.
and I assume the same is true for a CTA, both put in financials. And
So with a CTA, that's when they already have the schedule.
that's right. So
So,
they've already done it.
so
Yeah.
they won't need that then.
Yeah.
Yes. They're just responding to opportunities at that
Yeah.
point.
That way. Yeah.
Yeah.
My company has NAICS code that do not has NAICS codes that do not that we do a lot of business in tech hardware and library services. Should these be on different contracts, tech hardware and like on different contracts?
So years ago, GSA had separate schedules. That's why it's called GSA schedules, even though now there is only one. They consolidated all the schedules together, and that's where the large categories kind of came from. So you can have SINs from multiple large categories on one contract. So you would not have more than one.
Yeah, which is great. Do we
Yes.
need to get 8A certification or can we utilize the Vet Cert program for the set aside?
So it really depends on what opportunities you're going after. If you want to be a part of the competitive 8A pool that GSA has underneath of the schedules, then I would pursue that designation. But there are opportunities under the other set asides as well. So it just depends on what you're targeting and where you see those contracts coming out.
Okay, okay, great. We hold an FSS contract. Are they also moving away from SIP?
Yes, SIP is going away. That's what that FAS catalog platform is. And if you're asking the question as an existing schedule holder, it likely means they haven't triggered you to migrate to the new system yet. When they do, it's a process of like a baseline mod of your pricing to convert you over. But yes, SIP will be gone.
It will be gone. And when?
I think it depends on how long it takes to finish the migration of all of the contractors over. But all new offers are going in under the FAS catalog platform from the very beginning.
Okay. If you choose to add a SIN to your GSA, do you already need commercial or government work done in that area? Example, you currently provide marketing services for the government, but you choose to add public relations as well. However, you don't currently have past performance for public relations.
So when you're talking about services, you provide a narrative and a write-up around the experience, and you can use the same project for multiple SINs for support, but you do have to demonstrate that you have experience in that space. So one of the things you could look at is there anything in that scope of work that would align with PR that you could use? Otherwise, it's about being strategic in growing that past performance so that you have a project you can use to add it on your GSA schedule.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
What are the best sources to stay up to date on GSA mass solicitation updates, refresh changes, templates, policy guidance? What's the best resource out there?
So one thing I will say is on Interact, GSA Interact, you can sign up for alerts and they'll send you emails. And I know that's where my email came earlier today about the upcoming refresh, like the advance notice. Solicitation updates will come out there as well. And then they publicize them and update the documents. And there's a website that GSA has the latest solicitation and templates on. I think policy guidance wise, I would look to go on Interact, see what you can sign up for there because there are a lot of different news alerts you can get. And I would also just make sure you're bookmarking all of the relevant GSA websites and like vendor support center and things like that so you can quickly kind of check in.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for that guidance. Is there a self-performance requirement for GSA work? I've seen 15% on federal contracts, so I'm assuming it would be the same. Would be
I'm
same.
not sure what they're
Self-perform-
asking here.
Yeah, if there is a self-performance
Are
requirement.
they talking about if they sub, is there a threshold for what's allowed? If that's the case, I'm going to tell you, there is no threshold that's formalized. But I will say, from a compliance standpoint, our team, when it gets too high, starts to feel a little bit uneasy because you don't want it to be a pass through. So you need to be performing some of the work. Everything needs to be aligned to your labor categories. And I think I would question if it's starting to get close to 100% subcontracting.
Yeah,
It's
okay.
yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. Can we not use a key employee's experience as past performance for springboard programs? Sounds like the 5 year and business companies need to use the company.
You can use a combination if necessary if you don't have it. Um, so it sounds like they're saying maybe they have a corporate experience, but for past performance, they want to use a key employee. You can't qualify under the startup springboard program, so you just have to go under the traditional offer and do what you can to demonstrate that past performance and show and document the relationship there. One thing about springboard program is those key personnel that you use. If they leave, you have to update and let them know because that's a part of where your experience is coming from as a business.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. I have a strong supply chain in both the TAA compliant and non-compliant, but globally competitive where allowed. I am planning to target contract opportunities where I can be competitive on lead time and price for something like this, where I have identified specific supply classes to focus on, but not specific products. Does GSA make sense?
GSA only makes sense for the TAA compliant items. You cannot have anything that's not TAA compliant, and you have to certify the items are compliant. when you submit the offer. And anything you do where you knowingly withhold information or hide it is potential false claims. So I would say if you are focused on opportunities where you have price flexibility and want to sell to agencies where you might be able to use the non-TAA compliant and that is allowed in the procurement,
Mhm.
then GSA probably is not the right place. But if you are going to add the TAA compliant items and pursue opportunities, then yes.
Okay. Okay, great. Good advice. Do the total sales businesses make under a CTA go toward our minimum requirements for compliance on the GSA schedule holder?
Yes, that's a great question. So this is another reason CTAs are great, especially as you're trying to get that sales volume under the schedule that's required. Because what they do is when you propose, you will break down who's providing what, and then you report your portion of the sales on your schedule, and the teaming partner reports their portion of the sales, and each of you gets credit.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Yes.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, I think we got through it. Oh
Great.
my gosh. And we, with a moment to spare. So thank you, Jacelyn Farrell, so much for
You're
this
welcome.
great advice. We're seeing, oh my goodness, look at all the love, the hands, the high fives. Oh my goodness, great information. And you really have laid out a great roadmap. And again, I always feel empowered when I am armed with the right questions to ask. And so thank you. Thank you so much for your time and your expertise. Great partners, as always, great instructors and support for VIP. I want to before we wrap up, I want to make sure that you're aware that you'll see a very brief anonymous survey appear on your screen, and it would truly mean a lot to us and our SBA partners if you could take a moment to complete it. Your feedback always helps us continuously improve these programs to better serve you, and thank you for doing that, and thank you for being here. We're in the home stretch now. Oh my goodness, the final session of our GSA series is happening on Thursday, January 15th, this Thursday at the same time, same place, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. And we're bringing you Brian Friel, BD Squared, who will present a roadmap to growth with GSA and GWAX. This is where everything will come together. Brian will show you how to create a clear, actionable roadmap that takes advantage of the GSA contract vehicles and GWAX to scale your business. You've built the foundation over these 3 sessions. Now let's map out your growth strategy. So make sure you're there to complete the series and get the full picture on how to take advantage of GSA contracts and vehicles. And there is a bonus here as well, a bonus opportunity. CMMC, we've been talking about it for, oh, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 years. And before you go, I want to remind you about another critical continued education session coming up on Thursday, January 22nd. So that's next Thursday, same time, same place, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. We're hosting Conquering CMMC. Stay compliant and stay competitive. If you are pursuing or currently working with DoD contracts, on DoD contracts, CMMC compliance isn't optional. It's essential. And the cyber join us as our cyber technology and privacy experts from Cohn Resnick walk you through what you need to know to stay compliant and competitive. This session is separate from our GSA series, but for many of you, it could be just as important for your business growth. So registration is open now. Make sure you don't miss it. And in closing, again, thank you so much, Jacelyn, and to SBA, our partners, for being with us and supporting us. And thank you. And I hope, thank you for your energy and your questions. Thank you, everybody who joined us. The questions, everybody learned from them as well. We'll see you Thursday on January 15th for a final GSA session with Brian Friel. Let's finish strong. Thank you so much. Be well and make it a great day. See you on Thursday.